Welcome to Directionally Correct, a Felix podcast with Cole and Scott. Today's guest, nobody.
There you go.
There we go.
I love it. Thanks to our sponsors, One Model. One Model helps people leaders at large organizations make consistently brilliant talent decisions by unlocking the analytical value of the data dispersed across your business. One Model's people analytics platform takes all of the heavy lifting out of data extraction, cleansing, modeling, analytics, and reporting of enterprise workforce data. One Model pioneered people data orchestration and has perfected the ethical use of AI and data science for leaders who need transparent and explainable decision support systems. HR and business teams trust its accurate reports, analyses, and storytelling capabilities. Data scientists, engineers, and people analytics professionals love the combination of governance and flexibility that no other workforce insights platform can provide. To learn more, book a demo at onemodel.co/directionally correct. All opinions are our own and do not reflect those of any other organization.
Yeah, it was definitely hard, like talking to David Solich, like Solat last
So lot.
week.
Yeah.
Just trying to be funny and interesting, this sort of stuff.
Well, I mean, I feel like you always had to try to be funny or interesting.
But I mean, I'll kick us off with like some a little somberness. I don't want to bring you down too much, but my mother passed away on September 26th. We were very close, and obviously it's a very tough life change. She was very kind, very sweet. I didn't realize as a kid how good I had it, like she would put like notes in my lunch and was always there. And it wasn't until I was older that I realized that, some parents, they're like kind of mean to their kids or like almost adversarial, like just or vindictive, this sort of stuff. But like I don't need to go down that road. But yeah, it was a very tough time. And thank you, Cole, for covering a couple weeks ago. And you were gracious enough to show up to middle of nowhere Texas to go to the actual services, and it was great seeing your face in the actual services. Um,
I'd do anything in a heartbeat.
yeah,
Well, how are you doing? You doing okay?
I'm doing okay. It was a really weird experience, leading up to the service, like nothing felt real. It still doesn't really feel real, but I had the presence to get up and say some words, and I think they resonated. Um, but like after the service ended, I spoke to you outside and went inside, and they had catering for us, and like this
Mhm.
like sense of peace came over me. It was so great. But I mean, obviously very distraught that my mother passed away, but the outpouring of support from friends like you has been just the love, all the love you feel. Like I don't really feel that I have a whole lot of friends, on a day-to-day basis. I don't talk to a lot of people, but the number of people that reached out just to send their love was just overwhelming, absolutely overwhelming. Shout out to Liz Conjar, who was great to me during this time. Max Bloomberg, thank you. He reached out to say, condolences, and I super appreciate that. And obviously you've been great as well. Ugh.
Well, I mean, I'm really glad that you're getting the support. I'm glad that, it sounds like you've had a little time to process and things are kind of making sense. I don't even know if that's the right way of putting it, but, you know, it's I never met your mom, but what you said was very touching. And now and at the funeral, so I don't know. I'm just
Thank you.
it's a really tough time to know what to say.
Thank you. Like when my father passed away when I was 13, so like not having that connection to the more distant, all my grandparents are passed away as well. So not having that connection to the past is really wild. Like even during this times, like, what was your grandmother's maiden name? I was like, shit, no
Yeah.
idea. No idea.
I mean, honestly, that was my biggest worry when you told me is like because I knew about your dad and everything. I was like, sometimes people become sort of rudderless when this type of thing happens, at least for a moment or two. And I was like, I hope you're going to be okay.
Oh, super appreciate that. But I will say that good things are coming out of it. Like, it's really showed me, like, hey, like, how many people I do have out there, and, to get in contact with people that you haven't talked to in a while, and, like, I'll just give advice to everybody, like, "Hey, call your mom if you still got them. Call your dad, call your best friend, they probably wanna hear from you, even if
Sure.
you don't think that they do, they probably do." And, also just be more open, like, I don't know if I would've shared this o otherwise, right? Like, just wanna put myself out there a little bit more.
Yeah, and like, like, I mean, we talked about this a bunch, like, I think I actively encouraged you against sharing. Like, 'cause well, I just one of the things I really struggle with is the line between personal and professional,
Yeah.
right? And what is and it's not like I don't want people to be supportive of me or supportive of you. It's like the folks who have no business knowing. And how do you draw that line? Right. And I don't know. I want to make sure that you get supported in the right way when you're going through something like this, and I want to make sure that there was no negative side consequences to something like this happening.
Life is short, and there's gonna be haters, but
Hmm.
who cares? And, like, we've talked about it many times just starting this podcast. The spotlight fallacy is so real. I
Yeah,
mean, I really think that yes, there are people out there will say dumb shit and, like, kinda, like, try to dig you, but 99.9, they're great. People are great, they wanna be kind, they are kind, and
I remember that song I sent you one time, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was basically like, "We're all gonna die anyway, so you might as well say what you want."
this is the way I feel in meetings when, like, someone's getting worked up. It's like, you know, the Andromeda Galaxy is gonna crash into the Milky Way galaxy in about 2 billion years and probably fling our solar system out into the ether, and the sun's gonna envelop the Earth in about 4 billion years, and we're all just gonna be incinerated. Like, we're all gonna be dead by then, clearly, but we're all just gonna be incinerated, and, like, nothing matters. So let's just level set before this meeting goes too haywire.
Yeah.
Let's chill out.
Well, I think that's probably a good pivot into like some of the things I think about a lot, and we've talked about a lot off the podcast is like what's the line between your personal life, your professional life, and how do you show up as your true self to work, right? And
And
what is that line, and like what's the right way to approach it? I don't know, especially with what you've gone through. Like how do you think about it now, and has have your thoughts on that changed recently?
I mean, I don't know if it's gonna have lasting effects. Clearly, I mean, like, everything you go through, like, you have, like, momentary reactions, and I got very sort of, for lack of a better word, like, loving with other people, very, affectionate to other people that I hadn't talked to in a long time. Um, but, like, we had Kevin Oakes on some time ago, and, like, there's this big push to, like, bring your authentic self to work, and he's like, I don't know if you want everyone being their true self at the office place.
I actually feel like it's not as in vogue as it was. For a while there, it was like everywhere I worked, it was like you got to bring your true self to work. And I haven't heard that actually in quite some time. And I don't know if it's necessarily gone away as it's just not as front and center as it used to be. And I think what organizations really struggle with is people actually started to do it. They started to bring their true self to work, and they're like, oh, we have some irreconcilable differences sometimes. How are we gonna manage this? And yeah, it's just kind of crazy.
Well, I think that the bringing your true self, like talk about your be open about what you think about a project. Be open about your be candid in what you're talking about. But I think that when it gets pushed into, like, say, political sort of theater,
Yeah.
I think that now we're beyond sort of work related openness, and we're not, like, deriving value anymore, really.
Yeah. I think it's like a 2 by 2 chart. It's like, is it related to work? Yes or no? Is it related to your beliefs? Yes or no? And if the 2 overlap, you're fine. But if it's just related to, because you got some axe to grind in some way, it's probably best to leave that at home.
I will say that, I am very open I'm very casual in how I interact with people that I don't even
Mhm.
know, right? And
Sure.
I get 1 or 2 reactions here in Seattle. One is like, "Why are you talking to me?" And the other is, like, people, like, they latch on to me and like, "Oh my god, someone will actually fucking talk to me. Oh my god. Oh my god."
Neither of those sound like particularly good situations to be in. Ugh. So how do you cope with that? I mean, just
How do I cope with that? Like,
well, I'm
well,
I'm more thinking of the latcher-ons, right? Like, how do you get them to go away?
I love them. I love them. 'Em, they're great. They're
Okay.
great, but it is like a spark in my own eye, and I'm like, "Oh god, you are starved for communication. You're starved for just actual human interaction."
I remember I was walking through the parking lot, at a putt-putt golf place the other day. I hadn't even played putt-putt because it was right next to another place, and
Likely story. Likely story.
well, and this person came up to me in the parking lot and they, "How did you play? Did it go okay?" And I'm just like,
What?
"We I didn't even play putt-putt." And, like, you must be so starved for communication, like, you're talking to a random stranger about their putt-putt game.
Like, yeah, I think in that situation, I would be like, "What are you trying to sell me? What's going on? What are we doing here?"
Yeah, it was very I don't know, it was weird enough that I wanted to talk about it on a podcast later.
When's the last time you did play putt-putt?
Last time I played putt-putt, I don't know, it's been quite some time. Have you played lately?
It's definitely not lately. Uh okay. A bit of a fallacy, but not really. So there's I think it's called the Flat Stick Pub here in Seattle, where I
Mhm.
walked through it because they had a bar, and I was just like grabbing a beer and just kind of want to see what they had. So it's like one of these sort of like indoor creative putt putt sort of scenarios where you like, yeah, you drink and you play some golf, whatever.
Yeah.
I did not actually play though. I just sat in the rafters and watched people do their deal.
Oh, now that you mention it, I did go to one of those indoor places like a year and a half, 2 years ago in Atlanta, and that was fun. I got to hang out with some folks, one of our previous guests, Sue Lamb, at Coke. I got to hang out with some of the folks at the Coke
Yeah.
team there, so that was cool.
In, you know the West End? Pardon me, the West End in downtown Dallas? It's not a thing anymore,
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the name.
but they used to have this big building, and in the it was either the basement or the top level. It must've been the basement. They had this place called City Golf, so this is a flashback for
Mm,
anyone from Dallas from the mid-80s, and it was the most amazing, like, putt-putt course you could imagine, like, different, like, I don't know, obstacles shaped like the things that you'd see in the city. It was really cool, especially as a, 8-year-old or whatever I was.
yeah, I mean, that's about as good as it gets for 8-year-olds, as far as 8-year-olds go. Um,
You a Topgolf guy?
I'm kinda top golfed out, to be honest with you. I've
Yeah.
been enough times, the novelty's worn off. It's actually not really that great for your golf game. You mostly wanna go with people who either wanna drink or who are beginners. It's not like I mean, it's fun, but it also gets pretty hot here, so that's also a part of it, generally speaking.
I went once, and I think I shot, like, 3 balls, whatever, hit 3 balls, and it was, like, $48. I was like, "Never again. What is this?" I don't even
Yeah.
like golf, so what am I doing here?
This is gonna be too much information, but, like, I am a golfer, and hitting off mats is actually bad for your swing, and so
Mm.
it actually makes me worse. So that's one of the reasons why I don't like playing it.
Yeah, I don't understand their business model. Like, I mean, the
I
properties,
understand it, have overpriced drinks and make people pay by the hour. It's a great business model.
but I mean, like, once again, like, how many times are you gonna go? And having all that land has gotta be incredibly expensive.
I don't know. I hear people like anytime it's like it's a very neutral third place where people can go and hang out.
Yeah.
And so anytime people like come from out of town or people just like want to say, "Hey, here's something that anybody can do because you don't have to be good at it to do it." A lot of people are like, "Well, let's just go to Top Golf, right?" And so it's kind of like a third place type of place to go to.
I get that. That is a good team building event where it
Yeah.
allows you to show some value in your team.
Yep, absolutely. Well, speaking of, team building, what What do you think about corporate offsites? And I was thinking this week about like what's some stuff that we haven't talked about, and both of you and I work at places, and presumably we've been to these type of offsites before, and even the dreaded virtual offsite as well.
Oh Lord.
So, what are your thoughts on corporate offsites? What are they good for? What are they not good for? And maybe if you want to touch on virtual ones too, be my guest.
I will be your guest today. I love that.
You kind of are being my guest. I don't know what's going on here.
I feel like you need a little desk and like a little talk show sort of scenario.
Yeah, Johnny Carson or something. I don't know.
Oh wow, that's a blast from the past. Um, it's funny you say that because I was just had an offsite last week. It was really like I've been to some at previous companies that are like kind of janky or like not real well put together, just very corporatey or whatever. But my company did a fantastic job of like putting together. It felt like a professional sort of conference that you would go to, right? With breakout sessions and good uh, uh, talks, etc.
Mhm.
And it's kind of well done. Where like the first day was like the large org, the second day was a smaller org, and the third day was like your I don't know how to describe it, director level org.
Okay.
So I mean, it kind of like went from big to small sort of scenario. Um, overall, it was amazing, especially that third day where it's like your director level org. It's like, how many people are in here that I've never seen their faces before, don't even recognize them, never heard their name. Oh my god, there's like so many people here that I need to be in better contact with. And I think in that way, it's really good. I also think that trying to download that much information over 3 days is really rough too.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a lot. Um, that's sort of like a bigger version of an offsite. The other version would be like an immediate team getting together and like plowing through specific details, which is sort of like a different animal entirely in its own way, especially if it's done well, where like you're actually making decisions. Otherwise, it's everyone go around the room and tell me your favorite animal. It's like this is not helpful.
Well, I think do sympathize with that sentiment. I will say that that is probably the most important thing, especially in now's day and age. Like, if you like, let's rewind before the pandemic, and if
Yeah.
you had a corporate meeting, and then you take everybody that's already going to the same office together and just going somewhere else, I think that there's marginal value to be gained there. But most of the time nowadays, people are coming from all over the place, and they may have never met before or get FaceTime
Yeah.
very infrequently. So the number one, and by far the number one in my mind, and sometimes you've got to do some shenanigans to really get adults to be cool around each other.
Oh
So
my god,
saying
yes, you
like,
do.
"Hey, two truths and a lie," and that kind of stuff is one of the ways that you can get people to kind of let their guard down a little bit. But it's just getting together in person and getting to know human beings. Making that connection.
The worst thing in the world is, you have a guest, like, come in and, like, they'll, like, speak, it's like, "Hey, I'm, Emily Campion," and then you're like, "Hey, Emily Campion. Now let's go around the room, 25 people. Everyone give your name, your title, your
Yeah.
role, and what you do," and it's like 45 minutes later, it's like, "Oh my god, well, see you later, Emily Campion, now that you've introduced everybody."
Well, and she was never gonna remember all those people
No.
anyway. It's good to have a little bit of context about who you're speaking to, but too much context is too much context.
I mean, like,
So
on the same side, you wanna talk about the virtual.
mhm.
I've had people have to sit there for 8 hours for 3 straight days on video to a conference room full of people that can, like, clearly communicate, clearly see what's going on, clearly the core of the conversation, and it
Yeah.
seems miserable.
That's just 2024's version of torture as far as I'm concerned. Like, it should be outlawed by the Geneva Convention. It's like it's awful.
It really
Um,
is, it really is, but there is some magic to getting together as a team every so often, right?
oh, yeah.
Just to get people together.
Well, I think you hit on a few of the high points. So the getting together and just meeting people and making real connections is number one by far. I think transference of information, having the speakers, having leadership share a vision,
Yeah.
having subject matter experts talk about a subject that maybe not everybody's familiar with. That's definitely helpful. Working on very specific tasks is, I would say, it cuts both ways, because I've been a part of some of these offsites where you have the right people in the room, you can really solve a problem and it's actually going to get solved, or
Yeah.
at least alignment is going to be had. I've also been in the ones where they just invite any, Joe Schmo to show up, and you're asking people who have no business trying to solve the problem to solve the problem. That has mixed results as far as my experiences.
You get too many cooks in the kitchen sort of scenario where it's like, not everyone's opinion is equal here.
Or just the likelihood of derailment on tangents just goes up dramatically, and I like a tangent as much as the next person, if this podcast is not indicative of that, but it's just not helpful at a certain point, and especially when you have a specific objective in place. I'll say a personal preference of mine, and I think they do work, I just don't like them, is breakout sessions. I cannot stand breakout sessions. I've never liked them. I've never been a part of one that I wanted to be a part of. I never liked leading them, even when I'm in charge of it. I don't like breakout sessions.
I think that's fair. It depends. It depends. Like once again, if you're talking about large organization offsites, breakout sessions
Mhm.
where like you go learn about, I don't know.
I'm talking about that you got a room of 50 people, there's 10 tables, and they say, "Hey, 5 of you go to each of these tables, and this table needs to solve this problem, this table needs to
Ugh.
solve this problem." And it's just and it's like self-organized. I just do not like them. I don't know.
Um. Yes, or just like here we'll split off into group every so often, like a psyop session will come up like this, like, hey, we're gonna split off into groups and we're gonna solve the core issues of IO together
Yeah.
individually, and you're like, your whole pitch for this session is like us do a bunch of fucking work. That's
Yeah.
your with people we don't know and don't ever care to talk to again.
Funny enough, I think I'm on one of those submissions this year. Um, but second of all, it's like, wouldn't it be weird if they actually did solve the problem? Like, yeah, like this problem that's existed since the beginning of time. These 5 people went off and actually solved it. How crazy would that be?
Ironically, I mean, that's probably where the best case to solve the problem, get some, like, diverse opinions and, like, actually solve the issue. Speaking of PSYOP, man, you gotta get your shit together as far as, like, reviewing these submissions. Like, I can't log into the website, my password doesn't work. It's if I log into the PSYOP website, it works fine. It wants me
Well,
to set up a new password. I try that, it says, "No." I tried to create a new username. It's like, no, you're already logged in the system. I was like, I don't know what the hell to do.
it was considerably more difficult this year. I agree.
Are you okay? You're dealing with this issue too.
Well, so once you kinda get past, so I did the submission, I felt like I was jumping through hoops.
Yeah.
But once you've done the submission and you've done the deed, now to do the reviews, which I've already done as well, that was easy because I'd already gone through all the hoops, if that made sense.
Well, damn. Maybe I just need to like figure out what I put in for my password when I submitted.
Maybe you
Shit.
just need to hit the forgot password button, Scott.
Well, I did. And it wants me to set up a new account.
Have you
Uh,
tried turning it off and turning it back on
I
again?
think I need to. I think I need to. Um, Anyway, I digress. Here's some funny news. Did you see that Zoom, speaking of virtual employees, they're requiring 5 days in office? Zoom employees?
I actually had not seen that, but that is kinda funny. I had to talk to Kelsey Colley about that. Jeez.
Of all places, you think that they would be the most forward thinking on the return to office scenario?
Well,
Or
tell me what you think about this. Like, every so often, not every so often, it's like basically every day, I see some kind of article either from like a CEO or about a CEO, and I could probably write them in my sleep. It's a CEO about why we need to be in the office 5 days a week,
Yeah.
and then another one from another CEO saying why our company is going to be more innovative and more competitive in the future because we are going to stay remote. And then they both have their cheering section and they go rah rah rah, and then the other team goes rah 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 when the article comes out, and I'm so tired of these. Like they're just you could write them in your sleep.
Kevin Oakes had a invoke him twice on pod. He had a good saying. It was like I think it's called like the Great Links or something like that, where it's like everyone has their links. Like you got a link to support you, you got a link for other people, and like people will find whatever support that they want out there, right?
Yeah. I'm I don't know. I guess I just when you see something enough times, I was like, it's kind of to go back to the offsite thing for a second. One of the things that I think is really great about an offsite, but also sometimes can be boring, is if you've heard the presentation before,
Mm.
right? So if you go to the offsite and somebody gives a presentation, you've never heard it before, got a lot of really great information about it in it, it can be awesome. But sometimes you go to the offsite and you say, "This is the tenth time I've heard this presentation. I didn't need to sit through this presentation an 11th time." That's how I feel about all these articles. I've seen the article, I've read the article, I've been there, I've seen it 10 times, I've seen it 100 times, if not that. We've talked about it on the podcast. I don't need it anymore. I'm good.
I was like getting back on that innovation tip. Matt Clancy, the economist, he presented an article about when it's most advantageous to come back to the office, or like when it's beneficial to get together. And essentially, what the researchers found was that in-person situations, you're more likely to debate ideas and really go through the performative process of
Mhm.
iterating. Remotely, you don't go through it. It's just kinda like first idea is best idea. First draft is best draft, and you just move on.
That's actually a really good point, and I'm wondering from either research you've seen or work you've done or just your perspective on it more generally, how do you do that better? Because that is one thing I've struggled with as a leader personally, is if you have a distributed team,
Yeah.
how do you get past that? Like, and you can't fly everybody in all the time to try to get past it. How do you get past the first draft itis?
Yeah. Well, I and to steal like Michael Arena's words, I think you got to get like really intentional, and you
Mhm.
have to be like really mindful of what stage you are in innovation, or ideation phase, right? Like, so if and that's difficult, granted, right? You don't know when ideas are sparking and when things are popping off, but, like, once you feel it start to happen, or you gotta make it happen, that's probably the time to bring in 2 to 3 close people, close to that project, whatever,
Yeah.
and let them get together and hash it out over, 2, 3 days, whatever it is, provide them the time. And then you can go off and be that's the other part of the article. Is like once you're off into the wilderness and you've already met, you can do performative actions very well remotely.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
coordinate and this sort of thing and like handle things independently, but it's really that incubation part of the process that remote teams just don't do as good of a job of going through the process of challenging and developing new ideas. Um,
Here's an interesting nuance.
yeah.
Is there a difference between remote teams and distributed teams? Like, in terms of work quality? Like, if you just have, like, 3 different offices or 5 different offices, everybody goes into an office, but most of the time to meet with people, you're still on Zoom, or you're still on some kind of virtual environment. Is there any qualitative difference between everybody just being remote and in their houses or just distributed teams more generally?
I've seen a little bit of research on this, and I not enough to like quote it.
Mhm.
But I do believe that there has to be some sort of tax that you pay for globally distributed teams. So, i.e., more than
Okay.
one time zone away, or even
Yeah.
one time zone away. Because like, oh no, we need to coordinate with the people in Dublin. Well, that means
Yeah.
I got to get up at 6 in the morning so that they don't leave work by 6 p.m. or whatever it is. Same if you got to coordinate with someone in Singapore. It's like we
Mhm.
don't want them to get up at 2 in the morning to have a what would be an 8 a.m. meeting here.
I'd be curious, and anybody who's listening right now, feel free to send this to me if you've done it. But like once you get past, let's call it 8 or 9 hours of time zone difference, has anybody ever done like a study of the trade-offs between the time differentials and the productivity gains? Because presumably if you have such time zone differences, a lot of times it's because
companies are trying to operate in lower cost environments,
Yeah.
and so they're thinking, "Hey, this is going to be a positive because it's way cheaper to operate this way." But is there a flip side? Has anybody ever done an analysis of like the productivity losses or the well-being suffering as a consequence of it?
There has to be, and I'm sure someone out there has done the research because, like, if you got to coordinate with a team in, say, Germany, Israel, India, Japan, whatever it is,
Yeah,
um, everything becomes asynchronous at some point
correct.
until you have to sync up. And well, yeah, I mean, this probably all funnels back to like the original thought, like coming together for the initial phases. That's where the real magic happens. Once you get distributed, that's when you can be performative remotely. But even so, I hear cases of like people saying like, okay, well, I sent them this information, this deck at
Mhm.
5 p.m. my time, and they're going to send it back to me by 8 a.m. my time again. So they're working on it overnight, but there's no real communication taking place there.
Yeah, it's like a really weird kind of relay system
Yeah.
almost, and I don't know. I'd really like to see a highly scientific view on it. And again, I'm sure somebody's done it. Um,
Maybe I'll do
I
some
don't know.
research. I'll do some research in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, that would be a great topic. And sort of related, I don't know. Did you want to talk at all today? I mean, we've both been having some conversations about how to add value to organizations with people analytics. Like, I think this would be an example of an organization actually doing some research to show what are the trade off, what are the costs. I don't know. What are your thoughts on what's been going on lately in terms of I wrote those articles about the last 15 years of people analytics and how we
Yeah.
need to add more value. And I also got a book on the same topic, but I don't know what's been on your mind lately.
Well, let's just run through that. So you got a number of articles on the topic and a book on the topic. You don't need my thoughts. What are your thoughts, dude?
Well, I do. It was so I sort of talked about this with Brad Williams the other day, so I don't want to stomp on it too much. I had an interesting conversation with somebody this week, and it really kind of got my wheels turning.
Okay.
Um, because in reaction to the articles, they kind of got bummed out. And I realized that there was two interpretations to what I'm talking about, and I had only considered one of those interpretations. And so one interpretation is, hey, monetary policy is potentially making it more challenging for our field to grow. So as a consequence, we need to make sure that we add more value to organizations as an antidote to that, so
Yeah.
that we control our destiny. And so essentially the prescription is let's be better. Let's try harder. Let's quantify our work. The other one was people were just like, well, I didn't really sign up for that. So now I'm bummed out and I'm not sure I want to do this anymore. and I I had just hadn't considered that. And so I had a conversation with somebody about it earlier this week who kind of brought that to my attention. And I was like, wow, that's a really good point. It doesn't make me not want to talk about it or not write this type of stuff anymore, but it's a concern that I hadn't really thought about and addressed.
I have two large thoughts here. Like one, like I think back to like say expectancy charts, like how to show the value of specific like selection instruments specifically.
Mhm. Yep.
Schmidt and Hunter 98, despite the fact what you think about the IO, pardon me, the IQ
Aspect.
aspect or whatever, they do have a good formula in there to show. I think it's like point 0.7 standard deviation times the salary over like whatever the hell it is. So I mean, like we do have these sort of tools in our IO playbook, but I don't think anyone would say that that's our bread and butter, right? It makes me think that we really need, as people analytics functions, to be closely aligned with, say, like finance, and like if we
Yeah.
have a project, have them calculate what is the expected value, what is the implementation cost, what could we potentially get out, what's the worst case scenario for the scenario,
Yep.
and then now it's off people analytics hands, and we're not doing these like things where it's like, well, we saved 15 hours of employees time, and like 15
Mhm.
hours times $100,000 a year, whatever the hell it is, that's $1 million. And people are like, oh yeah, but people are just like, laying on their couch or something for those 15 hours. A lot of people just
Yeah,
like
it's not like they're being more productive. They're just not doing that work anymore.
they're just not. You just like took away like 15 hours of productive work is what you did, right?
Yeah.
But if you put it in the hands of finance, they could have I don't know, a business sanctioned dollar value almost, a refereeing body to kind of show the value of our work.
Well, I like that you teed it up that way because that was kind of the point of the conversation and why I really wanted your perspective on this. Because again, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Is some folks went into HR or IO psychology or people analytics because explicitly because they didn't want to partner with teams like finance. Right. And do you think that has a role in the future of people analytics? Like, should that be a core expectation of our field, or is there a reasonable case to be made for that? What we should be immune to all this. Like, and again, I want to like you were mentioning the Smith and
Yeah,
Hunter example. Give some credit to like the folks, John Boudreau, Wayne Cascio, Alexis Fink. Investing in People is one of the best books out there ever on finding different ways of calculating the value of human capital initiatives, right? And they give the Smith and Hunter example, but they give a variety of others. And so I'm just wondering, like, some people probably never heard of that type of analysis or think it's irrelevant
yeah.
to what they do. How do you react to that?
My initial reaction is like, why would you not want to know the value that you're adding? I mean,
Hmm.
we do know from the IO literature that pay for performance is very much favored by high performing individuals.
Yep.
Um, and to be able to, I think that if you knew how much dollar value you were bringing in, it would cause you to think bigger, have better ideas, and not have such sort of like incremental, iterative sort of advancements or just stay the course sort of performance. I really think that you could advance the field, your job. You can get promoted faster, all these sort of things if you quantified the value that you're bringing in. And if you don't want that quantified, what's going on? What's going on with that?
Well, tell me how you react to this, because I think part of the what's going on. I don't think there's a single cause, but I think a lot of people, especially let's say the folks with PhD, suffer from this. Is they just kind of they got a PhD because they wanted to go do research, you know? And there was a really cool point in time where, you didn't just have to go into academia if you want to do research. You could go into, a big FANG company or a big
Yeah.
governmental body, and you could do some really world-class research, and there were the same kind of constraints as if you were in academia, like you didn't have to prove the value of something, right? And I think like largely that time is somewhat passing, and I think
Yeah.
folks didn't really want that to pass. They wanted to just kind of continue on that pathway forever.
Well, I mean, just think about what you're asking. Just from a practical standpoint, it's a business. It's
Yeah,
here to make money. It's not to make you feel great about your life. If that comes along, fantastic.
you could bring your whole self to work, Scott. It'd be great.
Bring your whole self to work. But like, imagine. Okay, like people during the pandemic were posting these things on TikTok and Twitter of like a day in the life. I come in about 10 a.m. and I
Yeah,
grab a free bagel, and then I go to the workout studio. I talk to my friend, and like we hang out and have a free lunch. I kick out about 2 p.m. and then like go straight to the gym. It's like I'm so happy that you're living your best life, but
yeah.
that is not providing value to the organization.
Well, it seems like that's probably not the kind of evidence you want out there when your employer's performance review comes along or something like
But I
that.
mean, you can do research and provide value at the same time. You just need to like kind of like flip your mind on it, right?
That has been my perspective the whole time, and I'm really glad you said that because that was the thing that just didn't click for me. Is I just assumed everyone felt that way.
Hmm.
Is it's not a mutually exclusive environment where doing research and adding value have to be at odds with one another. Like I always saw them as complementary, and so that's my hope is that we can get further in that direction as a field. Just say, hey, we can all be good at this because frankly, to do a lot of the adding value is the same type of skills that you need to do research. It's the same stuff. It's just applying it in a different way.
It's applying in a different way, and it's just like one step beyond because think about our whole what people analytics is all about. It's about helping leaders make better decisions. Like,
Yep.
we are not actually making the decisions. We can make recommendations, we can implement programs, we can implement trainings, all this sort of stuff to help out leaders to make decisions. That and like you got like a little correlation, and like
Hmm.
get a regression, you get a novo, whatever you got. All this is designed to help make future decisions.
Just slap a little correlation on it. Just like a little salt and pepper, just a little correlation. Just put it in there. You know, I think this has been fun. I feel like I don't want to monopolize the conversation about every week talking about the same thing, but it is top of mind for me. So that's just something I'm thinking about.
No, and you have a great way. We've talked privately about different ways to show value, and I won't put you on the spot here, especially if it's already been talked about in the past. But like, you are masterful at this, and uh, everyone ping Cole. He'll
Yeah.
get free advice.
What already happens. But the thing is, and so I guess I'll just get into it now, because I think I disappoint every single person when I talk to them about this because I think they just assume I have some like kind of magic formulas that no one else has, and that's really what happens. And it's really like a few basic blocking and tackling things. Like one is make sure before you do some work that you strategize a way that you could quantify the value of that work before you start,
Yeah.
not after you start. And another thing that I do, I mean, like I have probably like 10 or 15 of these things, but these are kind of the main two, is just plan for evaluating the effectiveness of your work before you do it, right? Which is like typical program evaluation, but really just focusing on the ROI. The second is mandating to your teams that they track the value of all their work, right? Because if you mandate it, then at the end of the year, you can tally up all the ROIs that you brought and get to a single figure, which then gets to my whole ref on pay for yourself 10 times over every year,
Mm.
right? So if your team costs $1 million, guess what? Bring in $10 million of value. Great. I promise you, you will have an unimpeachable position with your CHRO, your CFO, your CEO, whoever, if you cost $1 million and you bring in $10 million of value. I promise you, you are untouchable.
I'll build on what you just said there and say that it's like Hubbard's how to measure anything is it's all about confidence intervals and this sort of stuff.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, like if you're saying like money saved by hours spent on a project, whatever. Maybe it's here or there, whether it's super accurate or not. At least it's a figure. It's like we saved $1 million. Maybe it's a little more, maybe it's a little less, what have you.
Yeah.
But here's the overall value. It's way better than going in and being like, "What'd you provide?" Be like, I don't know.
Well, and that's why it's 10 million instead of 2 million, right?
Yeah,
That's why it's 10x, because the reality is, and to throw back to our name, most of these analyses are directionally correct, right?
yeah.
There, like you said, Hubbard, there's an upper bound estimate, there's a lower bound estimate. I would say try to be conservative in your estimates, but also if it's 10 million, who cares if in actuality it's 5 million? Because you're still 5xing it, right? Let's do some confusion matrix. The confusion matrix. Real quick, we wanted to say thanks again to One Model, the AI and people analytics pioneer, for sponsoring the episode. And now back to the confusion matrix. We're doing great, man. We're gonna have a marathon today.
We're gonna marathon. Okay, that's fine.
We're gonna marathon.
I will chop this down to just a few then. These are just random things I found and I thought they were funny. Do you have any corporate icks? Corporate icks.
ICK ick.
Yeah, like girls say like, "Oh god, I like this guy until he gave me the ick." Right?
Yeah.
Like just sort of
Well,
things that annoy them. I'll give you one, like people pinging you on Slack and being like, "Hey," and like wait for you to respond.
oh my god. I would never would have I never would have said that, but that happens, and yet, well, two things happen. It's either ick or my heart drops. I'm like, oh no, now they want to talk about XYZ thing that I don't feel like talking about right now. Right? Otherwise, because if it's going to be a good interaction, if somebody just gets into it. They just
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
"Hey, about this thing." But if somebody just says, "Hey," or "Hey" with a period after it, oh my god, that means that we're about to have a bad conversation.
Have you ever had someone just sit there and wait for you? Like, you could let them go for an entire week. They just will never.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I just never respond, you know? I can outweigh your outweighting this, I promise.
How about this? Do you have, quote unquote, the chair? So your clothes are too dirty for the closet, but too clean for the dirty clothes. So where do they wind up? They wind up on the chair.
Oh, yeah. That drives my significant other crazy, but, it's not a chair. Well, I do have a chair, but that's it's a box.
You got like
Um,
a cardboard box?
it's, well, you know those, like, plastic boxes you can get from, like, Home Depot or
Yeah,
whatever?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're like storage boxes. I put them on that, but yeah.
Jesus Christ, classy bedroom.
It's in my closet, but
Oh,
yeah.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
I am guilty of this. At some point in the evening, I will just like essentially just undress in various stages and just start throwing clothes on the couch. That's my.
This is my fantasy,
And then I wake up in the morning and go find where I left all my clothes.
Mm.
Check this out. This is from the University of Michigan. They studied this alphabetical discrimination. So it's related to your last name and grades. So professors will grade things in alphabetical order typically, and we learned from previous podcasts that if you go first, you're more likely to get a worse overall rating. So you have systematically people at the beginning of the alphabet have worse grades. Alphabetical discrimination.
I thought you were going in a different direction. So that does sound like a travesty. I've thought a long time about the tyranny of the alphabetical order, and I've thought about this since I was a child because they would always do you get to stand in a line, right, before you go somewhere, and they
Yeah.
would always do it in alphabetical order. And so it always prioritized and benefited the people with like A's and B's as last names or first names, depending on if they were doing first or last name. And I always just felt like in like a graduation ceremonies, they always do it in alphabetical order. And like there's so many things in life that are done in alphabetical order. It's like if your name is Al Adamson, to have quote a previous guest, if you're Al Adamson, you have been at the front of every line in history. Now, maybe I guess it sounds like when your tests were graded. I'm sorry, Al. Your tests were graded a little bit more difficult, or like a little bit more harshly than other people. But it does seem like as a net benefit, being in a high early on in the alphabet.
Uh yeah, there must be positive aspects as well, right? Like, all right, kids, line up for cotton candy in
Yeah,
alphabetical order. Like you're already done by the time that old Zeeklebop gets his,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Zach Zeckler,
Oh,
he
dude.
the cotton candy ran out for Zach half his life. He never got the cotton candy.
Here, you'll get a kick out of this. I was at home playing hooky from work, and I didn't come into the office, and I found this old LaTeX printer paper, and I did use it for notes. 10/7/2013 at 9:39 AM in the GTM
Ew,
computer lab. I printed something and
talk about
still
going way
using
back.
it. Do you know how to pack a suit for a trip?
The fact that I thought my answer was yes, but I'm unsure makes me believe my answer is no.
Well, clearly, I flew to Texas recently, and had to pack a suit, and I can't lie, I had to get on TikTok and figure out what are the mechanics of it.
Okay, well, tell me if this is correct.
Okay.
I always put you get, like, a suit bag, those, like, plastic things that go
Yeah.
around the suit, and then you fold it over in the bag. Is that the correct way of doing it?
Well, okay, that would be like a separate sort of garment bag thing, and I have a story about that of going to PSYOP, Philly, flew
Mhm.
back to Dallas from Philly, and, left my garment bag just in the little, you know, uh, baggage
Oh,
whatever,
wow.
baggage claim, And luckily, it had a very distinct sort of thing on it, and I called them, and they're like, "Yeah, we got that. You're the luckiest motherfucker on earth that we still have this. Come on down." So I had to drive back from Louisiana to Dallas, go get my suit, and, there you go. But if you're gonna pack it in a suitcase, the overall strategy is to essentially, you put your hands inside the jackets
Uh-huh.
and, like, kind of almost flip it inside out. You gotta make them touch in there, and, like, it's like a trifold technique, and somehow you
Oh,
trifold your pants on top of it, and it seemed to work.
interesting. Okay, I've clearly never seen this, so no, I'm doing it wrong.
It was some, fancy suit guy from London, so or at least he had a British accent, so it must be official, clearly.
Here's my hack. This doesn't really work with suits, but it does work with like dress attire. Is if it gets wrinkled in your bag, just turn on the shower in your hotel
Oh,
room real
yeah.
hot and
Oh,
get the
yeah.
steam, and then the steam kind of irons out all the wrinkles. Like that's my life hack.
The steam will cleanse it for sure.
Yeah.
Cleanse all your sins.
The problem is if it goes too long, now your shirt's just wet, and then you're like, now I'm wearing a wet shirt all day, which that stinks. But yeah.
Here, I found one more. Let's see if I can actually figure this out real quick. Yeah, check this out. I found this morning. Monkeys actually predict US elections. This is from, just a few weeks ago. But essentially
You could argue that that's true on multiple levels, but continue.
apparently when presented with photos of the candidates, they stare at the loser longer, and they think that they're, I think it said that they're have a preference for masculine features, so essentially they're picking up on feminine features. Uh, but it's
Interesting.
been correct for several cycles in a row, but there you go, man.
Yeah, it probably suffers from small sample sizes though, so
I
it's
don't
just
know, we just have an abstract to work with here.
yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
Well, that's probably a good pivot. Let's do. You want to do some a little bit of a marathon nerdery?
Yeah, absolutely.
The nerdery. What do we
Absolutely.
call this? Is it
Trading
trading blows?
blows, trading
Trading
blows.
blows.
Yeah.
I've got an interesting one to start out with.
Okay.
I think you'll like this. You may have seen it, but if you haven't, I'll be happy. And credit to Richard Rosenau for sending this over. But it's another good Ethan Mullick find of conformity in large language models. And so what they did is they did the Ash conformity experiments, but instead of on human beings, they did them on LLMs. And guess what? All of the LLMs still suffered from the need for conformity. So if other people were or experts were telling them that, hey, I believe the thing that you don't believe or whatever. How I can't even remember exactly how the Ash conformity
Yeah.
experiment goes, but essentially, I always get them confused between if it's the one where they do the electric shocks or the one with the line length or what have you, or the one with Confederates and all of that. But the point is that the LLMs still suffer from the bias for wanting to have conformity with others. And first of all, that's hilarious. But second of all, it's disturbing because you would hope that they're trying to go for ground truth, not just what everybody agrees with.
That's really interesting. I'm trying to, like, process what might be going on in the background where it's, is it conformity or is it consensus? Is it I mean, those 2 they're not exactly, completely overlapped in the Venn diagram, but they're pretty close. Um, no, that's
Well, just to read what they said, applying Ash's conformity experiments to LLMs, they tend to conform with the majority opinion, especially when they are uncertain, i.e., that they are
Oh,
having trouble
okay.
making the right prediction. But I think again, human beings suffer from the same thing. So having a devil's advocate mitigates this effect just as it does with people, i.e., if you have all consensus in a room, not a devil's advocate, then you're more likely to conform to the majority opinion. So really
There
fascinating.
there's something called, DeGroot learning. Matthew Jackson talks about this in his book. It's absolutely fascinating. But essentially, how people weigh their opinions. Like, say you go and see, Star Wars, and like I think it's like a 7, but someone like you really respect says like that's more like a 2. You will lower your opinion of that movie a little bit, but if more people start saying no, it's like a 10, you will raise your opinion accordingly. So we're all subject to these sort of social social inputs, et cetera. And I wonder if
Yeah.
a similar thing is going on with the LLMs here, where like they have like, well, like 10 sources says A and one says B. I'm gonna go with A.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's probably statistical reasons why they would do that. So it does make sense, but yeah, I can't speak to it technically though. I just thought it was an interesting concept. What you got for
Um,
me?
I got check this out. We're coming up on Thanksgiving season. You'll see a theme here. So our politically diverse Thanksgiving dinner is shorter than politically uniform ones. So obviously we know the trope that like you got all your family together and granddad, uncle, college age sis starts talking their rhetoric about whatever politics they got going on. Previous research has shown that if you have diverse dinners, they will be 35 to 70 minutes shorter than politically homogenous dinners. They used the current study used a mega analysis, which I think they just took like two studies and put them together. I don't know. This is kind of a childish name, mega analysis, and found that overall, if you have a diverse political discourse at dinner, it's 24 minutes shorter than homogenous. So people actually do stop the dinner. They're like, we're done. We're done. We've had enough.
Well, my funny reaction to that is, did they control for food quality? Because
I did skim it. I didn't read it all, but I did skim it, and it had to do with people saying Trump impeachment and Trump for president, something like that. It was 2020. They
mhm.
did have like my house or someone else's house, and food was in there if I remember correctly.
Because like my trade off is like if the food's good, I'm probably willing to tolerate a little bit more disagreement than if the food is bad. If the food's bad and there's disagreement, I'm like, let's get the hell out of here.
Do y'all have Thanksgiving traditions? Do y'all do anything fun?
We trade it around. Like
Yeah,
I think we're hosting it this year, which I'm excited about, but also have trepidation for.
yeah, totally.
But yeah, it should be great. I think we got family coming in from all over.
Man, you ever like think about like non-traditional Thanksgiving foods, like go lobsters?
So we've done. I mean, no, we're not going buck wild with it or anything, but the best Thanksgiving food I ever had was with some of my wife's relatives. They made a Peruvian turkey instead of like a traditional Thanksgiving turkey.
Oh, what's
That
that?
might have been the best thing I've ever tasted. Right? Like, and again, I don't know how they found the recipe or what have you, but it was so tasty and juicy, and oh my gosh, it was so good.
Is this like I'm totally guessing here, but it's like a Hawaiian luau or like bury it in the backyard and like cook it for hours or something?
I don't know how they did it, to be honest. I mean, and it
Yeah.
may have been fried, and so add in frying something always makes it taste better anyway. It was very, very good. Because I'm actually, and maybe this is blasphemous to say, but I'm actually not a big turkey fan, and
Man.
so it made the turkey. It was the best turkey I've ever had by a good stretch.
I would encourage everyone to go to Terry Black's in Dallas and get the barbecue turkey. Texas barbecue turkey is unreal. It's not even.
I've been to Terry Black's. I'd never wasted a visit on turkey because I'm not a turkey
I
fan,
understand.
but Terry Black's is very good.
What you got, man?
Well, I wanted to build on the point you made a second ago about the mega analysis.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you ever heard of something called SMOTE? Do you know what SMOTE is?
SMOT?
SMOTE.
It's not ringing a bell.
Okay. So I don't know what it is either, but they were talking about the title of this article is from the Journal of Data Science. Is augmentation effective in improving prediction in imbalanced data sets? So the thought here, and I haven't done this type of analysis in quite some time, and I was not familiar with this term called SMOTE. But apparently, like think about if you're trying to do turnover prediction and you've only got 5% of cases are in the turnover category and
Yeah,
95% are
yeah.
in non-category. there's many different techniques you can do to balance your data set, right? So you're trying to, you have an imbalanced data set, you're trying to balance it. And one of the leading ones that has been put forward is this thing called SMOTE, which I had never heard of. But these authors, they basically looked into it and they found that both SMOTE and oversampling distort class probabilities, compromising model performance. And so I'll put a link in the show notes to the article because it is pretty technical. But they gave some suggestions about how to do better prediction in imbalanced data sets. And so I thought for some of the more technical members of our audience, they might find it helpful in terms of, these are the types of things we're trying to predict in the workplace.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big problem, specifically in turnover prediction, where it's a rare event, specifically voluntary turnover, right? Um, where you may have, I don't know, 5%, something like that turnover. So now you're talking about like a very select group, and if you start just duplicating cases or oversampling, I mean, you could start getting like some like weird findings there that would lead to inaccuracies in how you want to handle it, especially if you want to do the worst thing ever, individual level turnover prediction. And like
Hmm.
go talk to individual people, be like, "Hey, you look a whole lot like the people that already left. What the hell's up with you?"
You look like you're thinking about quitting. Have you considered not quitting yet?
Have you
Um,
considered quitting? We're thinking
w-
about yeah.
one of my favorite things, and this never ceases to amaze me because this always happens, is you get kind of the junior level data scientist who comes in and they're gonna predict turnover. By God, they're gonna predict it. And again, you have an imbalanced data set, and they go, "Look, my model is 95% accurate." And really, all they found is that they
Yeah.
just predicted everybody would stay, and that means 95% of the people stay. So now they're 95 predict. And I was like, "Yep, this is somebody who doesn't understand, statistics or data science very much at all."
I mean, I've been guilty of this in the past. Be like, "Oh my god, we're so good." You're like, "Nah,
Hmm.
nah."
Nope.
It just everyone's a 0. No one's gonna
Everyone's a
leave.
zero. Womp womp. Sorry.
No,
Try again.
that's really good stuff. I can't wait to actually check that out.
Yeah. What
But
you got for me?
I got we're gonna stay on the Thanksgiving tip here. Thanks, gratitude, and well-being over Thanksgiving holidays among college students. So they examined the interaction between the Thanksgiving holiday and gratitude and well-being with a 3-week diary study of 172 undergraduates and used multi-level modeling. What they overall found was that people had higher levels of gratitude on Thanksgiving. So that sounds great. But when you put in the person level of gratitude, they did find negative relationships between Thanksgiving and life satisfaction. The overall finding is that gratitude is crucial for determining if a person will have positive or negative affect around Thanksgiving. Sort of interesting.
Interesting. So let me make sure I understand this.
Yeah.
So the within person, that means that even though they're having gratitude, they still feel depressed. Am I interpreting that correctly?
They will have elevated perceptions of gratitude, but when you control for them over the entire length of the study, they may be
Hmm.
higher or lower. So the overall sample has higher gratitude on that on that day,
Yeah.
but when you control for the within person, the gratitude will really affect whether your life satisfaction is higher or lower. So
Oh, okay.
once again, go call the people that you think that you may want to call. Like go.
All the people that you love,
But it's
it's
about gratitude, man. It is. I get that sense on Thanksgiving. Sorry, international listeners. Uh, surely
of
you can be grateful for other things on other days, but
As a side note, I still don't understand why international folks listen to our podcast. And there's a there's a considerable number of people, and like all of our references make no sense to you. I don't know.
oh
It's
my
so weird.
god. I was on a train from Paris to London with someone we know, and it was the day before Thanksgiving, and I was telling this person they don't have Thanksgiving here. So, like,
Mhm.
they're not gonna celebrate tomorrow, and this person's like, "Yeah, of course they have Thanksgiving here," and essentially peer pressured me to go a few seats up and, like, go to this very nice English lady, and I was like, "Tomorrow is Thanksgiving in America," and she said, good for you. It fucking melted me. I was like, okay, conversation over.
That's I can just imagine that happening too. That's why it's so funny to me. Oh, that's good. That's good stuff.
What you got, dude?
Well, this is sort of related. So I've got one friend of the pod, Ludic Stellic. I think we've talked about once or twice things that he's posted. This is a summary of an article by Wang, Lewin, and Ma from 2024 in Nature about whether motivation causes performance or performance causes motivation. And I feel like this has been something that's been debated forever, and so it's really great to see what these authors found. So essentially, they did 4 different linkages between time 1 and time 2 work motivation and time 1 and time 2 job performance. And
Okay.
what they found is motivation does cause performance. Performance does cause motivation. A reciprocal relationship between the two does exist, but they are causally unrelated. And so what their findings suggest that work motivation is more likely to cause job performance than vice versa. So, and there's a lot of implications for what that means in terms of
Repeat that again. Work motivation is more likely to cause job
job performance.
performance. Okay.
Job performance.
Than the other way around.
So to put it in a practical sense, like I've heard leaders say in the past, the reason why everyone's so motivated right now is because they just got their bonuses, right?
Yeah.
And the bonus came from the
Oh
company
yeah,
doing
yeah,
well,
yeah, yeah.
right? Whereas you could say, oh no, the leader gave a very motivating speech, and then the workers perform better as a consequence of their increased motivation, right? And so what they've essentially found is that both are related, right? They're both causally related to one another, but work motivation is more likely to cause job performance than the vice versa, which leads you to believe that you obviously should put stock into trying to cause job performance in any way that you can. But if you want to cause it the most effectively, you should try by motivating employees first, which I thought was an interesting finding.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's also like kind of like basic psychological theorization, right? Like you look at some of these models of motivation out there, and it's like, yeah, of course, motivation would be the first step because you can't. Well, without motivation, like nothing's gonna happen on the performance angle, right? You need to like be activated to do something before you can cause a performance. But I'm trying to rationalize the other part of it too, which I guess is some sort of like reinforcement learning, maybe. Like so, you get good at a skill, you get motivated, you get good at a skill. Therefore, you're more likely to engage in that skill. Like you play the
Yeah.
piano, like you want to learn how to play the piano, you learn how to play the piano, you get a little better. That's more motivating. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, you absolutely want to get on the flywheel, right?
Yeah,
You want it to
absolutely.
start like that's probably the best case. And so I guess what you're really looking into is if you're not on the flywheel, is how do you best ignite the flywheel to begin? And I guess what they're saying is if things aren't going well, the best way to ignite it is to focus on workers' motivations first. And I think the real reason behind the reason of doing this type of research is for years organizations have struggled with, does employee engagement matter?
Yeah.
Right. And what this is saying is, yes, focus on engaging your employees first. That will be the motivation kind of catalyst. And then that will lead to the job performance. And then because you're in the cycle, it makes it easier to get on the flywheel of seeing that reciprocal relationship or that reinforcement that you described.
Motivation is such a critical topic. It's like also like very ephemeral because because like everyone's like motivated by different things and for different reasons
Sure.
and different ways. And I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about it, but I mean, like people are weird, yo. I think that's the
Yeah,
takeaway.
I think that is. Do you have one more for me?
I have blah, 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 blah. Let me see. Yeah, I got a twofer for you. How about this? I'll
Okay.
double down. The politicized. Can you see the screen? Yeah, looks like you
Yep.
can.
I
Politicized.
love how you're on the Thanksgiving and the politicized
Well,
fact. The funny thing is this is gonna come out after the presidential election, even though we're recording it before, so we have no idea what's gonna happen.
Yeah, I
But,
mean, like, we're
this is
right
interesting.
before the election, so we don't know what's gonna happen, like you said, and, hopefully, your team wins, and you can drink the blood of your enemies, and if you lose,
I
they probably stole the election anyway. So, I mean, that's all you gotta know.
we do not condone blood drinking. Please don't do that.
The okay, but I mean, you and I are very intentional about not being political and like kind of shutting down any sort of political rhetoric on the show, and for good reason. These two articles kind of get at that. The politicized scientist credibility cost of political expression on Twitter. So obviously, there's a measure of scientists' polarization on social media and the impact on their levels of trust. So what they did is they took 1,700 respondents and they put vignettes in front of them with synthetic academic profiles and had these respondents rate them and found that politically neutral scientists were seen as most credible. But on the left and the right, you saw a fall off, like monotopically, of levels of trust as they got further away from that central position.
So, just to make sure I understand, are they saying that it's best to be neutral if you want to be seen as credible?
Exactly, exactly. And the further away you get from that neutral position, the less credible you are seen as. And here is another one. This
Hey,
is
hey,
political.
maybe that means that we're credible, Scott. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it
Or
makes perfect sense. Like you come out and you start, sh- showing biased opinions.
yep.
You turn people off, all this sort of stuff. And here's another example: political endorsements by the journal Nature and trust in scientific expertise during COVID-19. So essentially, they showed that a large reductions in trust associated with Trump supporters when Nature came out and essentially endorsed Biden during the 2020 election. And what they found was that it was a lab study that they presented this idea to both Trump and Biden supporters, gave them information about the Nature endorsement, and what they found was that there was a massive drop off in article citations and requests for articles from Nature from Trump supporters after learning that they endorsed Biden, but there was no gain in trust or article request from Biden supporters. So essentially, like you lost half your audience and you didn't gain anything from the other half.
Yeah, so it's lose. So basically, not being neutral is lose lose. Is what this is saying.
It really is. It really is. So, I mean, this goes back to like bring your true self to work. Hey, let your freak flag fly, but there is a penalty to pay.
Yeah, I mean it. According to what you just said, and I didn't. I'm love that you're tying those two things together because I hadn't really thought about that, but it really is a lose lose then, right? Because you probably feel less good, and the people that you work with might feel less good too, and so nobody's winning in this case, right? So I don't know. I
Well,
don't
here
know
you
what to
go.
do.
You care if I like triple down? Can we get the?
You got one more for us?
I do. I do. Check this out. I haven't read this one yet. So this is from a retweet from Ethan Mollick. What the year of this is? I don't have it, but essentially it says that if you want to be happier in life, what notes did I write down? Blah, 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 blah. Makes
Mhm.
case that you will be happier, better informed, and like your fellow humans more if you unfollow hyper partisan accounts on Twitter. So essentially, just following these like super partisan accounts make you feel worse and actually give you worse information overall.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember that happened because that's when in 2019 I got off social media just for that reason. It
Yeah.
was like it was affecting my quality of life, and I'll tell you this. I mean, I'm not saying my life is perfect, but it's definitely when it comes to these type of topics, sometimes I feel like I'm living in a different universe from everybody else because I just don't see a lot of the hyper partisan stuff, and frankly, I have a more balanced demeanor as a consequence.
And you got time to go to Top Golf and all this sort of stuff too.
And putt golf,
And putt
clearly.
putt.
Well, on a related, this is just accidental, but it's on a related note. And this is from a friend of the podcast. Emily Pelosi sent this to me.
Hey.
Um, New patron of the podcast as well. So thank you, Emily.
Number one rated podcast affiliate.
Gosh, this is such a doing this podcast sometimes is so weird. 'Cause just talking about some of this stuff, like this is so awkward.
She was
But
my celebrity crush.
she was. We talked about that. Um,
Hey Emily, how you doing?
God, this is so crazy. All right. So in the Journal of Applied Psychology, one of the things that which was striking to me, wasn't so much the framework they put forward, but this article is called Toxic Work Climates, an integrative review and development of new construct and theoretical framework. And so much research has been done about the what I consider to be the most obvious thing ever, which is if you work in a toxic work environment, your life probably is worse as a consequence in a variety of ways, right?
That's shocking. Yeah.
Shocking, right? But the thing that no one had ever done apparently is to create a definition and construct of what a toxic work climate is.
Yeah, I like this. I like where this is going.
And so what they essentially, a lot of times they focus on things like abusive bosses or aggressive employees or signs of bullying or incivility and the like, but they actually put together an integrative conceptual review. And you know Emily's like, I've been sending this to everybody. I was like, well, I'm glad, please send it to me, because I think this is so relevant at this moment. It's like we need a theory of what it means to be a toxic work environment so that we can perhaps diagnose and then untangle these type of things that are going on in organizations.
Yeah, I mean, you start with the first step in psychometrics is define the construct. So
Yep.
this is what that is, and it reminds me of like well, you go back to like I'm one of these heathens that are online, and there's lots of people that talk about their toxic relationships and this sort of thing. It's like, well, what did he do? It's like, you know, I asked for a large fry, and he brought back a medium fry. It's toxic situation. You're like, I don't know if that's what it. I don't know if that's what's really going on. I just think that you just got mad, you know. But and you see the male perspective too. Clearly, the kind of analogous sort of situation. But we hear about these toxic environments, and I'd be interested if it's actual behaviors or if it's the impact. So, like, you think about a toxin, it exists, like, just in nature, but it
Mhm.
has negative impacts on you over here. Like, is it all the effects that you have as opposed to the actual behaviors that are engaged in? I don't know.
I mean, there's obviously a spillover, right?
Yeah, well, you would it wouldn't be toxic if it didn't have a negative impact.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to affect a variety of things. And I mean, again, there's been countless research studies done about its relationship to job performance, its relationship to people's feeling engaged or retention, or, name organizational variable. They've probably done some affiliated research to that. But I think I actually wasn't expecting this going into today's episode, but it's kind of emerged that I think the theme of today is, how can you create an environment where everyone can thrive, right? And I think a lot of it is, be your true self, but that probably comes to your opinions, but leave your, you call it letting your freak flag fly. Maybe leave that at home. In terms of like some of the politics stuff, like maybe be a little bit more neutral. Maybe if you're making Thanksgiving food, maybe don't make your turkey so dry. I don't know. Like,
You that is the opposite of a toxic work situation. Nice juicy turkey.
yeah, and so I think I don't know. I think the underlying premise is maybe see things from the other person's perspective, and maybe we'd all be better off for it. I don't know.
I think so. Like, show gratitude, show openness, show kindness. Man, we're going off into a weird directionally correct episode now, boy.
It has been weird. I mean, we started off on a not typical foot, and I don't know. I think it's kind of good to lean into it, considering what's been going on in your life, what's going on in the nation, what time of year it is,
Yeah,
and it's just a weird, crazy time.
I think so. I think that's well said. You wanna wrap it up here, dude?
Yeah, let's wrap it up here. It's been fun, and I don't know. I'm just glad to be friends with you, dude, and
Love you,
I'm
bud.
glad to hear you're doing better. All right, thanks everybody.
Directionally Correct is dedicated to you, our listeners, to help educate and entertain you on how to effectively do people analytics. By supporting this podcast, you are helping us continue to provide valuable insights and knowledge to our listeners. Please consider becoming a patron of the podcast. You can find the link to sign up in the show notes or at patron.podbean.com/directionallycorrect. Thanks for your support.